Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to have you back for week 3. I just watched Miranda's really great video about bonding with our children through play. I just wanted to finish that up by retouching on her learning goal. So one suggestion she had made for a learning goal was, I would like to learn to follow my child's lead when playing and not impose my way on my child. As a reminder, it's just fine to write a different learning goal. It's also fine to mimic exactly what Miranda had written or maybe even some variation of it. So if you mimicked what Miranda had written, you might want to answer the second question that asks, how did you accomplish your learning goal? Something like this. Today we learned about child-centered play versus adult-directed play. Child-centered play is when the child is able to take the lead and be creative, and the adult follows the child's directions. We watched some video examples, learned about different types of play, and learned some ways to handle play problems. The third question says, tell one way you can use your new skill. So what I had written was, I can use child-centered play to build a stronger bond with my child. When I allow my child to be the leader during play, I give my child a chance to build their self-esteem and creativity. This bond will help us get through the tough times easier. So moving forward, I'm excited to go into reading. This is mine and Miranda's most favorite lesson. We could each rattle on for hours and hours on supporting kids with reading. So I'm going to try to refrain from going too far, but we do have some really great tips and tricks to share today. So before we go into any new ideas about reading with children, I want you to take a minute and think about what reading was like during your childhood. So some questions I want you to ask yourself are, what kinds of reading practice did you get at home growing up? A lot of people, when thinking back, find that they either got a lot of reading practice at home or they got almost no reading practice at home. The next question asks, did you have books available to you at home? Again, a lot of people find that, yes, they did have access to books and literature, and then others find that, no, really their access to books and literature revolved only around being at school. Maybe at your home you didn't have access to books, but maybe you were brought to the library often, or maybe your next door neighbor had a plethora of books that they would share with you. Another question is, did you see other people in your family reading regularly? There is a definite connection to a child's engagement with reading and love of reading, and whether or not they see the adults around them reading and engaging with literature. Remember when we spoke a couple weeks ago about this topic of children like to mimic what they see adults do. And so the skills that we want our children to practice, they need to see us practice as well. And then the final question is, how do you feel about reading now? As you can maybe imagine, there is definitely a correlation in how people answer these questions and how they feel about reading today. So those of us that had a lot of practice reading at home, they had books available to them, and they saw adults in their life reading regularly, tend to have a better relationship with reading now. Or at least feel more able or more competent in reading well. While those that did not have much reading practice at home, they didn't have books available to them, and they didn't see the adults in their life or in their family reading, tend to have a poorer relationship with reading and would maybe identify as not being a very good reader themselves. So reading has a monumental impact on our child's ability to navigate through school successfully. Research tells us that by third grade, they can take a child's reading ability and make a pretty good prediction on what their success in graduating high school will be. The reason why they're able to tell this as early on as third grade is because around that time, if you don't have the foundations of reading set, it's going to become more and more apparent, and you're going to be falling farther and farther behind. We have to spend those first years in elementary school really learning the skill of reading, because all subjects rely so heavily on reading in order to study and learn those subjects. And so if we don't have a good foundation for reading and literature, then we are not going to be able to comprehend the math textbook, the science textbook, the history textbook. If we are spending all of our time trying to just figure out how to sound out or comprehend the words that are written, then we're not going to be able to comprehend the bigger messages that are being taught, and we will continue to fall further and further behind. So Smart Reading gave me this infographic some time ago, and you can pause this and take a minute to read it to yourself. However, the main takeaway is that we really need to be encouraging our children to be reading 20 minutes per day. And if we are having our kids read 20 minutes per day, this is going to equate to 3,600 minutes per school year and 1.8 million words per year. The student that reads 20 minutes per day scores in the 90th percentile on standardized tests. This really combats the previous belief that that the ability to score in that 90th percentile or to be really good at test taking is something that you're either born with or you're not. This research actually tells us that with practice, we're able to get to that spot. So we're going to learn some strategies in engaging our kids in hitting that 20-minute per day mark.
Hi, I'm Heather Burrows. I'm one of the University of Michigan pediatricians, and I'm going to talk to you today about something that is really important to me, and that's reading to children. It's really one of the most important things you can do for their cognitive and language development, and a real gift that you can give both yourself and them to spend that time with books together. That may be sitting in the middle of the kitchen floor, it may be sitting in your living room, maybe sitting outside and enjoying some sunshine as well. It really just matters that you spend a little bit of time reading with your kid to develop those habits that are really going to carry them on to be successful for the rest of their life. So when you sit down to read with your kid, the first thing I want you to do is take your phone, turn it off, and put it away, because this is really a time for you to spend some special time with your child. As you read with older kids, they're going to want to pick out the book that they read. And sometimes it's going to be a topic that they're interested in, something new that they want to explore. And sometimes it's going to be the same book. They may want to read that same book over and over and over and over and over again until you're kind of tired of reading it, but that's okay. Reading those books that are familiar to them really helps them learn what to expect on the next page. How do you predict the next word in the phrase? How do you read the picture and understand what the words are? And that's really how they learn to start reading. And so when they read books over and over again that are comfortable and familiar to them, it can be kind of boring for you, but it's really important for kids. It's also fun to look at pictures in books and try to explore them. You don't have to read the words that are on the page. You can explore the book in a really fun way without ever reading any piece of it. That can be really helpful for families for whom reading English may not be part of their skill set. Either they speak another language or they don't know how to read. It doesn't mean that you can't enjoy spending time with books and your kids. The other thing that's really important is that you have books around the house. If your child sees you enjoying books and having them as part of your life, there's a pretty good chance that your child's going to find them something that's going to be important for them as well. I hope that you find time every day to spend a little bit of reading time with your kid, especially during the summer months.
So, as our pediatrician from Michigan University had said, let's find some creative places that we can read with our kids. I know that one traditional place is that we do it before bedtime. Uh, Sometimes I have parents say to me, I'm very busy. I work. I have multiple children. They're all engaged in sports. They have homework. How am I supposed to find a way to read with them each 20 minutes per night? And this can be really, really creative. Uh, Maybe we're not doing 20 minutes with each individual child. Maybe we can do it as a collective. Maybe we're able to read to our kids while they're taking a bath. Maybe we're able to keep a bag of books in our car. And so then when we are waiting outside of the middle school with our elementary school kids, we're able to read a couple books during that time. Maybe when we make it to our doctor's appointment 15 minutes early, we're able to get some reading in then. This can be really, really creative. And I encourage you to do your best to find ways that we can get some reading into our daily life. So I want to take a minute to talk about how many of us were not taught the correct way to read when we were growing up in school. So reading has two different parts. One is called decoding. And so decoding is the sounding out, the way our words blend together, like cat, at, cat. That would be blending. It's about understanding how a comma or a period tell us to pause. It's about knowing the different rules of pronunciation. Decoding is an important technical part of reading, and it's where many of us growing up and learning to read in school spent about 95% of our time learning. The other important piece of reading is comprehension. And in my opinion, the most important piece of reading is that comprehension. So comprehension is whether we are able uh, to take the information that we're reading in the book and somehow relate it to our lives or our previous knowledge or previous experience. When we are spending all of our time working on that decoding piece, that sounding out, that understanding how the words blend together, or understanding how the periods or commas work, we are not able to comprehend. So the decoding is really important. However, it's really the technical or mechanical pieces of reading, and comprehension is really where we need to get to. In the past, we would spend just about all of our time working on decoding. However, our standardized tests would be entirely around comprehension, something that we spent almost no time on. In the past, we also seem to think that if we spend all our time on the technical pieces, the mechanical pieces in the early years, that the comprehension will just kind of fall into place once we get those technical skills in a good place. And we now know that that's incorrect. We actually need to be spending a lot of time around that comprehension piece. And in my opinion, it is the absolute most important piece, because even before I'm able to sound out or blend words or do those technical and mechanical skills, I can still engage with literature. Maybe it requires someone else reading it to me. However, I can engage with it, and I can make observations and predictions and relate it to my life and still learn from literature, even if I'm not the one reading it. Another important piece of that is that it's going to build that interest. And any of us that don't like reading, we know that a big piece of it is I'm just not interested. If I'm not interested in a book, I can't pay attention to it. And so we really need to build that love of literature in our kids young. I'm going to show you two videos that teach a reading strategy called a picture walk or a book walk. Many of us maybe have never seen these before, so let's go ahead and learn what they're about.
I'm here with my friend Lauren, and today we're going to read the story. There was an old lady who swallowed some leaves. Have you read this story before?
No.
Do you think it'd be a good idea to swallow leaves?
No.
Me either. Yuck. What's going on in the cover there?
She's swallowing leaves.
Yeah, and then she's got a little dog friend. What's he doing?
He's swallowing leaves.
He's swallowing leaves too. That doesn't sound like a very good idea. We're just going to take a picture walk, and if you take a picture walk with your child, have you ever done that? We're going to walk through the book and look at the pictures, and that kind of sets up some of the vocabulary and helps you set the stage for the story that you're going to read together. So what's going on there, Lauren, on the first page?
She's swallowing leaves.
She is, and the doggy's watching her. She looks like they taste pretty good, but I don't know. Would you ever swallow leaves? Me either. Now what she got?
She's got a shirt.
Ew, and the dogs are there again. She's swallowing a shirt, and then she's going to swallow something else. What's she going to swallow next? Ooh, this shirt is getting full of leaves. We don't know what she's going to swallow next. Should we check it out?
Mm-hmm.
What she got?
A pumpkin.
A pumpkin! Oh no! Look at the cat.
Mm-hmm.
Does he like it?
No.
Does he want some?
No.
She's got a big old pumpkin she's trying to swallow. Let's see what's...
So I think that this woman does a pretty good job of introducing the idea of a picture walk. If this woman was asking me for feedback on what she maybe could do differently or how she could improve it, I would give a couple suggestions. Pardon me. So one thing that I might suggest is that she give a little bit more pause time between her question and in order to allow the time for the child to answer. The adult would often ask a question and give, I feel like, 1.5 seconds of silence and then be moving on. I also noticed that this woman would ask a question to the child, and then when the child didn't answer immediately, the woman would answer it herself. I would encourage her to maybe pause and count to 10 silently in her head in order to give the child a minute to give some more feedback and have some more ideas. Another thing that she did was that she would give the answer to the child. So for instance, at the end when she had said, oh, the cat looks like it doesn't like it, or the cat looks scared. I can't remember what the word was exactly. What I would maybe have said to the kid is, what do you think the cat is feeling? What about the cat tells you that it's feeling that? Is its face telling you something? Is its hair standing up? Is its tail curved? And then I would go even further and I would say something like, have you ever seen a cat have that feeling or be like that? What was that experience like? So sometimes parents feel that by asking all of these questions and having these conversations about the book and the pictures in the book instead of reading the words is not a helpful reading strategy. And I would tell those parents that that's actually incorrect. This is hugely, hugely important in helping our children to develop that reading comprehension. We need our kids to practice looking at the pictures and learning what the story being told by the pictures is. This is an essential part of literature. Another piece is that we really need our kids to have opportunities to share with us what their current knowledge is. Maybe my kid has never been around a cat before. Maybe they've never seen one before. If they have never seen one before, then they're not going to know what the signs are of a cat being scared or upset And so this is going to be an opportunity to teach that. Also, when we're talking about feelings and emotions and how we assess the feelings and emotions of a animal or human, this is also going to help to build that empathy. So really, there's a lot of learning that's happening here, even when we're just looking and talking about the pictures that we see. Another important thing that we want to remember is that if we spend our entire reading time, let's say we have 15 or 20 minutes of time that we are devoted to spending on reading together each night, and if we spend our entire reading time talking about the pictures in the book, that is still an effective use of our reading time. We have not wasted that time. Again, I just want to reiterate, even if we haven't read a single word, but we have interacted with this book for that time, that still is going to count as engaging with literature. It's okay to spend that whole time talking about the book, closing it, being done, because the next time we are ready to engage in some reading, kiddo is going to be excited to pick that book back up and actually read the words and see if their predictions or their discussions did fall in line with what the story says. So our next video is going to give us another piece of or some more ideas on how we can do that picture walk and engage our children in it.
Hi readers, welcome back to Parents Help Kids Learn, where we learn what good readers do, and then you have a chance to practice at home together. Good readers use many reading skills and strategies, and we're going to learn one more today. Good readers get ready to read. And when I say get ready to read, what I'm talking about here is getting your brain ready to read. The first thing that good readers do to get ready to read is they think about the title. This title is Ugly Animals. Let's think about that. What do you think this book will be about? Right! It's probably going to be about ugly animals. That's the first thing that good readers do to get ready to read. You think about the title. The second thing that good readers do to get ready to read is they do a picture walk. And that just means look at the pictures. If there are pictures in the book, look at them. And I'm going to tell you, oh my goodness, there are lots of ugly animals here. So quickly just go through the pictures and get an idea about what's inside the book. But don't read any words yet. We're not ready to read yet. That'll be later. We're getting our brains ready to read. Ooh, goodness sakes, there's a lot of ugly animals in that book. The third thing that good readers do is they look to see if the author has left any extra information for them. And there are some places that you can look for extra information. You can look on the front cover, or you can look on the back cover. And I looked on the front cover, on the inside, there was no extra information. I looked on the inside back cover, there was no information. But then, ding, 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 look what I found. There is some extra information right there on the back cover. Let me read it to you. They may be ugly animals, but they wouldn't have it any other way. Learn why being ugly helps these animals to survive in the wild. Wow! I'm going to read that last sentence again. Learn why being ugly helps these animals to survive in the wild. Wow, that was some good information. That is helping us get ready to read. And the fourth thing that good readers do to get ready to read is to make predictions about what they think the book is going to be about. Making a prediction would sound something like this. I think this book will be about, and then you finish the sentence. Maybe you were saying, I think this book will be about ugly animals and how their ugliness helps them to survive in the wild. So, do you see we've done those four things that good readers do to get ready? And we haven't even read this book, but our brains are ready to read. So now it's your turn. Pick a just right book and get ready to read by doing those four things. Think about the title, do a picture walk, read any extra information that the authors have left for you, and make predictions about what the book is going to be about. Because that's what good readers do. Happy reading, and I'll see you next time. Hi, readers.
I wonder if you have any recollection of being in school and what it was like doing that round robin reading when you were growing up. Round robin reading is when the teacher would assign the first paragraph to the first student in the first row, and then the next paragraph to the next student, and the next paragraph to the next student. And what every single person would do is they would count what student they were and figure out what paragraph they were going to read. And then they would spend the entire time reading through that paragraph over and over and over to themselves in order to make sure that they could speak it just perfectly. The problem with that is that there was then no comprehension. There was no comprehension in what the other students were saying. There was no comprehension in the paragraph you were even reading, because again, you weren't trying to make a connection to what was being read. You were just making sure that you could pronounce all of those sounds correctly. This is just not an effective reading skill at all whatsoever. Imagine if instead, when the teacher was going to open up that chapter in the history book to talk about the Revolutionary War, she started by asking students, what is the Revolutionary War? Does anyone know what it is? Or maybe had some more specific questions like, what were the two sides of the Revolutionary War? What were the names of them? What do we know about them? Where did it take place? If we had gone through some of these questions to, just like our presenter here was talking about, to get our brains ready to engage in the material, we would have been able to walk away with a much better understanding of what that textbook was asking us to pick up on. Some discussion questions that if we were in class, I would ask are, why is a picture walk important? And I really, really hope that we're all walking away with, it's important that we engage with the literature in order to get our brains ready for that comprehension. It's also going to serve as an assessment for our children. And so if let's say I was introducing them a book about the beach. And I asked them, do you know what the beach is? And they say, no, I don't. They are going to feel some confusion when they hear that word beach, beach, beach over and over again all throughout that book. And that's where their brain is going to get stuck and hit by a wall, because they don't know what is being described. Maybe you know that you had taken them to the beach last year, but instead you had called it grandma's house or the coast or the ocean or the sand. Maybe it's something as easy as giving them that vocabulary word and helping them to understand that, oh, well, this is just another word for the sand or grandma's house or the ocean. However, maybe you've never been to the beach before. Maybe you've never been to the ocean before, and they don't really know what it is. And so we would then need to give some other knowledge there. Another question that I would ask is, how would a picture walk change by ages? As our books get older and tend to have less pictures, we're not going to have as many pictures to walk through and look at and ask questions about to our kids. Maybe we're going to go more into concepts instead. And so for this book of ugly animals, if it didn't have, if it wasn't a picture book, or if I even was just reading it with older kids as a picture book, I would ask them, what ugly animals do you think would be in here? I personally would have a long list of animals that I think should be in that book, and would be excited to see if my suggestions were in there or not. Some other questions that we want to think about is, how do we do this with an infant? How do we do this with a toddler, a preschooler, a teen? All of these levels of comprehension and attention span are going to make a difference in how we engage in this picture walk. However, it's still important that we go through it with each of those age levels. If you have questions on how we do this with different kids or different books or different ages, please feel free to ask us about it this Thursday night at our office hours, or to talk to your parenting coach about it. We would love nothing more than to give some ideas there. So I had put up a list of questions that I just want to give some answers to. These are questions that when we go through this lesson in class tend to come up. So the first question is, should I still read with my child after they've learned to read? Yes, yes, yes. We are never done learning to read. I have noticed that parents tend to ask this question when their kids are third or fourth grade and they see them reading independently. However, I really want to remind you that the levels of reading become harder and harder, and they still need and benefit from hearing that out loud reading. So in the first years of elementary school, we really only have a couple pretty basic punctuation marks. We have a comma, a period, a question mark, and an exclamation mark. Think about how many more punctuation marks exist in your high school book or novel that you read in high school than there was in fourth grade. Our kiddos need opportunities to hear us engaging with those different types of marks. They also need to hear us say out loud words that they don't hear often. Does anybody mispronounce words that they know them, they could spell them, maybe they know those words, they know the definition, they know when they're used, but they don't know how they're pronounced? I know that one I always struggle with is anecdote, anecdotally, antidote. It's read like antidote, but I believe it's anecdote. I always struggle with how to pronounce that out loud because I read it so often, but I don't hear it out loud very often. Another example of this was my friend made fun of me when I said Des Moines. Many people know that area to be known as Des Moines, but I haven't heard that said out loud nearly as many times as I've read it. Okay, next question. Should I force my child that only likes comic books to read novels? Any person that doesn't love reading, I can promise you will often have a reason that says something along the lines of, well, I don't like reading because it's such a chore because I was forced to do it even when I didn't want to. And those people tend to not read anymore. I really take the approach of whatever your kids will read, that's what we should have them read. And so if our kid only likes comic books, I say take them to Goodwill, to the 50-cent comic book bookshelf, and buy them as many 50-cent comic books as you are able to afford. There's also a lot of books that mimic comic books called graphic novels. If you're not familiar with those, I encourage you to do a quick Google search on what a graphic novel is. And this is a very popular book format that follows that comic book style. If I often tell parents, if your child will only read cereal boxes, you better start collecting all of your neighborhood's old cereal boxes. Again, whatever is going to get our kids reading is what we want to do. I can't tell you how many parents ask me, how do I get my second grader to read on their own or fourth grader to read on their own? With their video games, I don't want to read them out loud to them anymore. And when that parent stops reading those video game prompts out loud to their child, suddenly their child learns how to read. This is so typical, and we need our kids to see that there's personal benefit and value in learning how to read, and we have to often find ways for them to learn that in creative ways. Are picture books a waste of time? Absolutely not. I hope that we have covered, I hope in those previous videos we covered that that's not accurate, and that there is a lot of engagement that comes out of reading the pictures and telling the story through the pictures. Another question, should I work on reading at home? Yes. And there are so many ways to do this, whether it's reading books, whether it's reading video game prompts, reading recipes, reading subtitles on TV shows and movies, reading the instructions on a game or on a arts and crafts kit. There's lots of different ways that we can engage with reading at home, and I encourage you to find different ways you can do this. Another question is, how can I use reading to bond with my teenager? I have a personal rule of whatever book I see my teenager carrying, I am buying and reading that book. This is so important for us to do, especially during these times when our kids, during those teenage years, are pushing us away and not as interested in us anymore. I really want to use reading as a way to continue to share a connection with them. That's going to tell my teenager that I'm interested in the things that they're interested in. It's going to give us something to talk about, and it's also going to give me a platform to connect with them, or to have discussions with them about topics that maybe I wouldn't have a way to before. In the past, I had a middle schooler that I was mentoring, and I saw her carrying around a book, and so I followed my rule of buying it and reading it. And oh my goodness, was this book covering some super adult topics that I had no idea she had been reading about. And I, at first, bit my nails and was really nervous and apprehensive. Um, but then I took a deep breath and I knew that I really wanted to provide some follow-up and some opportunities for her to, explore these topics that it's talking about, and also give some gentle lessons on some takeaways I'd like her to have. And so it gives me an opportunity to talk about the characters with her and what the characters should do differently, instead of me pointing my finger and being lectury. So I could say something like, well, when Mary did this in the book, what do you feel was the right choice she should have made? Or if you were Mary's friend, what would you suggest that she do? Or do you think that that was a good thing? Or do you wish that you could have told her to do something differently? And so this is a safe way to give some lessons and some reminders about really tough topics, without me having to be nagging at my child and then them kind of turning off their ears and not listening anymore. Instead, we could have this discussion about Mary and what Mary should have done, which is a much safer way to do so. Are some people born to be good readers and some people not? I am going to answer that question with no. I think that all people, with our personalities and our different ways of being intelligent, tend to have an easier time of learning some skills over others. I think everybody just has strengths and weaknesses and what they have some natural inclination or natural interest in. However, growth mindset tells us that anybody is capable of learning to be just about anything. And it just takes that practice, practice, practice. And so the more we practice, the better we're going to become. Finally, if I'm not good at reading, will I confuse my child's reading development? Absolutely not. It is so important that our kids see us be human and see us be lifelong learners. If our child sees that we have to sound out the words, that's going to encourage them even more for them to be trying it too. It's really, really encouraging for us to watch our role models, and that's who you are, parents. You are their role models, to see them struggle with things and to use the skills that we're teaching them to use, like sounding out and blending, in order to learn how to use that skill themselves. When I worked at a school when I was 19, there were books in different languages, and of course I couldn't read that other language, and so I would just make up a story based on the pictures, and it was kind of hard. I would fumble through it because I didn't know what picture was coming on the next page. However, that wasn't a detriment to the kids' reading acquisition or learning how to read. It made them more interested in it, and also helped them to learn how to make connections based on just the pictures themselves. So I want you to take a minute. I want you to turn to worksheet 3.1.3 in your yellow book. So again, it's 3.1.3 in your yellow book, and it's called 20 Tips for Reading with Children. I want you to go ahead and pause this video and take a few minutes, read through this and highlight some of the tips that you like. If we were in a class, I would maybe ask these questions of what benefits do children experience as a result of being read to, and what new idea do you want to try? Since you're doing this independently, I ask you to go ahead and ask yourself these questions after you've read these tips. So another thing that I want to touch on is that when possible, the best option is to read to your child to promote bonding. However, there are many other resources out there too. You can find so many YouTube videos of people reading books to children, and this channel specifically that I have this video on is celebrities reading to children, and how fun for you or your child's favorite celebrity for you to be able to find your favorite celebrity and them reading a fun book together. So we'll take a minute and we'll watch Elijah Wood read a book to our kids.
Hello, I'm Elijah Wood. Welcome to the SAG Foundation Storyline. I'll be reading a story today called Me and My Cat by Satoshi Kitamura, both illustrated and written by. So let's get into it. Late one night, an old lady in a pointed hat came in through my bedroom window. She brandished her broom at me and fired out some words. Then she left without saying goodbye. Nicholas, wake up. You'll be late for school. It must be Mom. It must be morning again. Mom dragged me to the bathroom and made me wash and dress. Downstairs, she interrupted my breakfast. She was furious. She carried me off to catch the school bus. I had gone, but I was still here. How strange, I thought to myself, pulling my whiskers. Whiskers? I rushed to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. Leonardo, my cat, was staring back at me, but it wasn't him inside. It was me, Nicholas. I couldn't believe my eyes. I had turned into a cat. Don't panic, I told myself. I sat in the armchair to consider the situation carefully. I fell asleep. When I woke up, I felt a little better. Maybe it wasn't such a bad thing to be a cat. I didn't have to go to school, did I? I hopped onto the table and from there to the top of the shelves. What fun! I could never do this before. I decided to leap toward the cupboard on the other side of the room. Ready, set... Oops. Mom threw me out of the house. While I was rambling in the garden, Gioconda, the next-door neighbor cat, came up and licked me all over my face. Yuck! Time to go for a walk, I thought. The brick wall was warm under my paws. As I got close to Miss Thompson's garden, a funny thought occurred to me. Miss Thompson had given me Leonardo when he was a kitten. Leonardo was Heloise's son. Did that mean that Heloise was now my mother? Meow, meow. Hello, Mom, I called tentatively. She ignored me completely. Farther along, I came across 3 mean-looking cats. Excuse me, may I go through? I said. No, go away. It's our wall, replied one. Well, I think the wall belongs to everyone. But before I could finish my sentence, they were all over me. We punched and kicked and scratched one another until we fell off the wall and tangled. Wow, 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 wow. The dog came running toward us, barking furiously. The cats ran away in all directions. It was Bernard, Mr. Stone's dog. He's a sweet dog, my favorite in the neighborhood. Thanks, Bernard. You came just in time. But he chased me out of the garden. Of course, he couldn't recognize me. So this was the world that Leonardo lived in. Life was as tough and complicated as it was for humans. When I got home, I went into the house. Then I heard a scratching noise coming from the front door. It was me, back from school, trying to get in through the cat flap. But was he me, Nicholas? Or was he poor little Leonardo inside my body? Once indoors, he continued to behave strangely. He scratched himself earnestly, and when he was done, he challenged his shoes until they surrendered. He licked his sweater clean, then spent a long time sharpening his nails. He found the goldfish particularly fascinating. He tried to sort the washer and the yarn, but at last he gave up. He found the radiator in the litter box irresistible, but he didn't seem to like me at all. At last, Mom saw something was wrong with her son. She became so worried that she called the doctor and asked him to come at once. Nothing to worry about, said Dr. Wire. He's just a little overtired. Send him to bed early and he'll be fine in the morning. Mom was still very upset. She held him tight in her arms all evening. I felt sorry for them both. I climbed on Leonardo in my shape and stroked his cheek. He purred. Then Mom stroked me gently. I purred. Later that night, the old lady in the pointed hat came in through my bedroom window. Sorry, love, I got the wrong address, she said. She brandished her broom and blurted out some words. Then she left without saying goodnight. Nicholas, wake up! You'll be late for school, I heard Mom shouting. Everything was back to normal. At school, Mr. McGough sat on the table. He scratched himself, licked his shirt, and fell asleep for the rest of the lesson. Well, that's the end of our story. It's been very enjoyable to sit here and read to you. If you'd like to rent this book from a library, you can go to your local library and get this book, and maybe you can read along with me. So you can click on me, and I'll read you the story, and you can read the book with me, which will be quite enjoyable. So thank you very much.
Okay, so now I want to just finish up our lesson about reading by retouching on that learning goal that Miranda had brought up to us about reading. So if I had mimicked her learning goal about reading, I may have written down something like, I would like to learn new and fun ways to incorporate more reading into my child's routine. Something that I may answer the second question with is, I learned that we can do lots of things to make reading fun. We can take picture walks through the book. We can find reading resources online. We can extend off of the story by learning more or visiting places mentioned in the story. We can talk about the story with each other. And then the final question of how can I use this new skill is, I plan to do a picture walk the next time I read a book to my child. I really encourage you to choose at least one of these skills that you are going to try in the future, preferably many of these different skills in order to enhance some reading involvement. I will say, as always, that anytime we make a change in our parenting skills or parenting styles or try something new, we should be ready for some apprehension from our kids because it's change and it's different. And they may say, I don't like this, or why are you doing it? And it's okay to answer and say, well, I learned about this new thing and I want to try it. And it's also okay to say, I know it's weird to try new things. We're just going to try it a couple times and see. I have had that apprehension from kids many times, and I've said that, and I've learned that they almost always are very excited to continue to use that new skill. So anytime you're trying one of these new things, be ready for a little bit of pushback, a little bit of wonder of why this change is being made, and be prepared to just give it a try, even when everybody is not on board at first. Maybe the first time I do a picture walk with my child, they may be very quiet and not give me very many answers, and I may have to pull the answers from them or even give suggestions, because again, it's something new that they haven't done before. But after trying it a few times, I promise that they will become more used to it and kind of get into the flow of it. One of my favorite things that a parent I taught this skill to came back and said to me a couple weeks later was that their either 4 or 5-year-old had brought a book to her and said, Mom, will you do that thing where we look at the book and you ask me questions? And I just always get a chuckle every time I think about that little girl saying that to her. This shows that she really enjoyed that bonding time with her mom and was maybe a little apprehensive at first, but even little 4-year-old could see the value of this. Okay, this has been a very long video. I'm so grateful that you stuck through it with me. We love this topic very much. I'm going to close out for the week. Miranda is going to do another video about emotion coaching with our children, and I am excited to see you on Thursday. Take care, and we'll connect again soon.